Think about everything you know about the Jeffrey Epstein network. The names, the island, the horrific scale. It's a story that has dominated headlines for years, focusing almost exclusively on his abuse of young women. But there is a parallel architecture to that world, a mirror image that operated in plain sight for decades, using the same tactics, the same promises, and was protected by the exact same wall of silence. While hundreds of women have come forward, a major part of this story has been systematically ignored. The men and the boys were in this network too. And when you finally start looking for them, you don't find a shadowy, secret island. You find a front door marked with the logo of an iconic American fashion brand. In October 2024, the structure finally cracked when the FBI arrested Mike Jeffries, the former CEO of that very brand, on 16 federal counts of sex trafficking. This story, however, isn't about him. It's about the shocking realization that when you ask the critical questions, who hired him, who protected him, and who funded him, you are led straight to the one name that keeps appearing in the darkest corners of the Epstein files. A name you are about to discover has connected both trafficking networks for 30 years. Before we pull back the curtain on that connection, we have to understand the man at the center, Les Wexner. To most of the world, he is the 88-year-old billionaire who built retail empires like Victoria's Secret. But behind that public image lies a startling pattern. In 1987, Wexner hired a relatively unknown Jeffrey Epstein as his personal financial manager. Within a year, he had granted Epstein full power of attorney, allowing him to sign deals, buy property, and even sell Wexner's Manhattan mansion to Epstein for a single dollar. At the same time this incredible level of trust was being granted to Epstein, a similar dynamic was unfolding in the retail world. Wexner had purchased another fashion brand, and in 1992, he handpicked Mike Jeffries to be its CEO. Look closely at that timeline. The same billionaire who was financing Epstein's life was also empowering the man who would run an industrial-scale trafficking ring targeting young men. He owned both companies, he was financially tied to both men, and both of their predatory operations were running concurrently. This was not a random coincidence. To understand how this worked, you only have to look at the story of Barrett Paul, a 22-year-old struggling model in 2011. He was brought into the operation not by force, but by a carefully constructed lure. A fellow model told him about an exclusive casting opportunity at a Hamptons mansion, supposedly representing the major fashion brand Jeffries ran. It all felt official, professional. The brand's own gift cards were provided to ensure he had the right outfit. He got on a flight, he arrived at the massive property, and everything seemed to confirm the story. Staff were in uniforms, other male models were present, and it looked like a legitimate event. But the moment he walked into the main house, he realized this was not a casting call. In Barrett's own words, it was something else, and he was manipulated into an intimate encounter while Jeffries and his partner watched. This was not a choice. It was a calculated operation designed by older, powerful men who had been refining their tactics for years, preying on aspiration and dependency. Barrett's experience was just one moment in a machine that cost millions of dollars to run. According to the federal indictment, Mike Jeffries and his partner built a massive infrastructure for this very purpose. They didn't rely on random parties. They hired a dedicated recruiter, a man named James Jacobson. Survivors remember Jacobson as a distinct, intimidating figure, often sporting a snakeskin patch to cover part of his missing nose. He would travel the world holding what he called auditions, but the tryouts were a test of compliance. Men had to perform explicit acts for Jacobson himself before they were even considered for events with Jeffries. For those who passed, the subsequent trips were designed to mirror a legitimate career-building opportunity. The entire operation was backed by the resources of a major fashion company, which funded the travel, the fake itineraries, and the events where drugs were introduced and non-disclosure agreements were signed under threat of immense lawsuits. This was not accidental. It was organized, it was strategic, and it was brutal. This is the point where the Epstein parallels become unavoidable. For years, Epstein would use his affiliation with Wexner's signature brand, Victoria's Secret, as a tactic, posing as a talent scout to lure young women with the promise of stardom. Mike Jeffries was using a remarkably similar script with his brand, but his targets were young men. These were two distinct operations, both using fashion as a front, both running within companies owned by Les Wexner. And the connection wasn't just corporate, it was personal. In 1996, Maria Farmer was part of an official residency program on Les Wexner's own property. While there, she states she was sexually assaulted by both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. When she tried to escape, she recalls being detained by Wexner's own private security staff. This all allegedly happened on a billionaire's estate, using his staff, and yet Wexner would later tell Congress he was naive, foolish, and gullible, claiming he had no idea what his protege was doing. It's a defense that feels increasingly thin. The reality, however, is now a matter of official record. In February 2026, Congressman Ro Khanna revealed that the FBI had officially classified Les Wexner as an unindicted co-conspirator in the Epstein case. This status means the government believes it has evidence of a crime, but has chosen not to bring charges. When Wexner finally sat before Congress for a 6-hour deposition, he repeated his claim that he had been duped. If that is the case, it paints a picture of a world-class business mind who was simultaneously fooled by two different predatory operations running within his own empire for 30 years. While Wexner remains free, navigating the consequences from a safe distance, the man he hired to run the retail side is preparing a different kind of defense. Just 2 months after his FBI arrest, Mike Jeffries' lawyers made a startling move. They filed court documents claiming he has multiple forms of dementia, including Lewy body dementia and Alzheimer's disease. They contend he no longer resembles the sharp, ruthless CEO who built an international fashion brand and ran a meticulously controlled sex trafficking operation for decades. If the court finds him incompetent in 2025, there's a very high probability he will never face a jury for what he has done. He was sharp enough to direct an operational architecture across multiple countries, sharp enough to spend millions on secrecy, but now that accountability is knocking, he is too sick to stand trial. It's a playbook that is all too familiar to anyone following cases of powerful men accused of similar abuse. Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, they all developed profound health conditions once they faced consequences. But while Jeffries gets to claim he has forgotten, survivors like Barrett Paul live with those memories every single day. When you look at the entire landscape of this story, you realize there is a massive scoreboard, and accountability is not evenly distributed. Epstein is dead. Maxwell is serving decades. Mike Jeffries is arrested but hiding behind a medical claim. And Les Wexner, the man who hired, funded, and empowered both, was named an unindicted co-conspirator by the FBI, gave a 6-hour deposition to Congress, and then walked out of the room. This system, as Barrett Paul will tell you, is not broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to. It's an architecture built by powerful people, for powerful people, to protect power itself. The Epstein files are far from closed. The real suppression isn't the algorithm, it's the structure of power in industries that are too comfortable looking the other way. The enablers are still walking free, and until that changes, the system will keep producing the same result.